From an early age, Lorna deBlicquy dedicated her life to aviation as a private pilot, barnstormer, bush pilot, charter pilot, and aviation inspector. Flying with wheels, skis, and floats, she distinguished herself as an instructor, and her accomplishments contributed to the advancement of equality for women in her chosen field. Lorna was born in Blythe, Ontario on November 30, 1931, to her mother Nora and father Maury, who served with the Canadian Army in the First World War and fought at Vimy Ridge. Lorna was the youngest of three children, having an older sister, Phyllis, and an older brother, Harry, who served as an RCAF pilot during the Second World War, flying Consolidated Liberator B-24 bombers for the Royal Air Force, which perhaps encouraged Lorna to develop an interest in aviation at an early age while still in school, where she was an excellent student, and worked part-time to pay for flying lessons in Ottawa, learning to fly in a J-3 Piper Cub at Atlas Aviation Flying School, making her first solo flight at age 15 after 7 hours and 40 minutes of instruction, then earning her private pilot license at 16 while still attending school, and made her first parachute jump while a teenager just to see what it was like. In 1952, Lorna earned her commercial license flying a Fleet Canuck at the Ottawa Flying Club, and got her first job in aviation as a navigator clerk with Spartan Air Services in Ottawa, which was operating a number of types flown in the Second World War. After graduation with a Bachelor of Arts degree from Carleton University in 1953, she married Tony Nichols and began her bush flying days in Manitoba, flying her own Aronka Chief on floats, gaining invaluable experience as a pioneer bush pilot in a field where female pilots were scarce. One of the aircraft she flew as a bush plane was a 1937 Waco biplane, CF-BBQ, known affectionately as Old Barbecue, an aircraft now restored to its original condition with new livery and registration and flown from its new home in the United States. In 1956, Lorna and Tony moved to Sudbury, where for 5 years she taught students to fly while also teaching high school at Nickel District Collegiate. In 1962, her marriage ended, and she then took up barnstorming in rural Quebec and flew as a flight instructor for Russell Bradley of Bradley Air Services in Carp, Ontario. Bradley's partner, Weldy Phipps, who was inducted into Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame in 1973, had developed the Tundra tire for use on terrain in the Arctic, and Lorna flew aircraft equipped with such tires while flying in the Arctic with husband Dick deBlicquy, whom she met as a fellow instructor at the Kingston Flying Club. From 1963 to 65, the couple flew in New Zealand, where Lorna worked on helicopters, gave flying instruction, flew tours, and earned a multi-engine endorsement, and had the opportunity to earn a private glider license as well. Returning to Canada, Lorna was an instructor at the Ottawa Flying Club, flew with her husband in the Arctic, and wrote about the success of Tundra tires used on Beaver aircraft that she flew for Atlas Aviation. Later, in 1986, the couple flew a Cessna 206 on famine relief flights in Ethiopia under challenging conditions on primitive runways. A competitive pilot, as well as an instructor and commercial pilot, for over 20 years, Lorna competed in women's air races, such as the Transcontinental Powder Puff Derby from Calgary, Alberta to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, flown with Betty Shermerhan in 1971, and in 1973 flew the adventurous Great Burlington Centennial Seaplane Race with fellow pilot and aviation columnist Neil McDougall. Lorna continued to add to her qualifications and experience in aviation, and her adventures in aviation made for good stories in the newspapers. But she was still working in a male-dominated field and had become an advocate for women in aviation, asserting her qualifications. And in 1977, she was hired by Transport Canada as the first female civil aviation inspector in Canada, flight testing instructor candidates, as well as doing commercial and multi-engine flight tests. In the following years, she was honored many times for her accomplishments, receiving the Order of Ontario in 1994, the Order of Canada in 1995, and made these comments when recognized in 1994 in the YMCA/YWCA Ottawa Carleton Women of Distinction Awards.
Ladies and gentlemen, it occurred to me that you have many speeches to which to listen tonight. I have a poem for you, and it's a little puzzle to see how it fits with my particular field, because pilots are not always poets. But it's not my poem. It comes from the 12th century troubadour legends. Though our song cannot banish ancient wrong, though they follow where the rose goes, and this song, swooning over hollow ground, fade and leave the enchanted air bare. Yet the wise say that not unblessed he dies who has lived a single May day. If we have laughed, loved, and labored in our craft, we may pass with a resigned mind. I have had the opportunity to laugh, love, and labor in my craft, passed on to me from women before me, and it is my hope that it will be passed on to women to come. Thank you.
Starting as a teenage pilot, Lorna spent over 50 years in flying, served as a role model, and continued to encourage women to pursue careers in aviation. Lorna deBlicquy was inducted as a member of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame at ceremonies held in Calgary on May 29, 2014.